It is Friday, and we are excited to get going today. We're going to be talking about, did our education system truly fail us? Did we do everything right? According to Dan Price, the millennial generation did everything right, and our system failed them. So let's get into it. Be sure to like, subscribe, give comments, give us feedback if you enjoy today's topic so we can continue to offer things that help you and add value to your life. Let's get it rocking.
Yes.
And we're back. All right, so it's been interesting for me. I've been following a couple of guys that are pretty outspoken about current state of capitalism in the Western world, specifically, I guess, in the United States. And one of them is Dan Price, who I actually like and have a lot of respect for. He's a Seattle guy who was made famous for saying or deciding that he was going to pay all of his employees essentially the same amount. I think it was $75,000 a year. And so he took a big pay cut to do that, and he's gotten a certain level of notoriety and fame for that, and has become more and more outspoken on social media about his feelings towards capitalism and corporate cronyism, and he has a lot of valid points. The other day, he posted that millennials had done everything right. They were the most educated group in America, and yet were financially way worse off than their parents. I thought that was a fascinating thing because for me, if you did everything right, we're not having a discussion about how you're worse off than your parents. But my perspective is it's always on you. It's your choice. Nobody forced you to go to school. Nobody forced you to make a particular choice. And so if you just followed the herd and did what everybody told you to do, the only person you can blame is you. So I want to discuss that today with the team. The institution of education, the current state of capitalism, and did millennials really do everything right? So let's get started. What do you guys think when you hear that?
I think my first thought goes into that statement that you made. Everybody follows the herd, right? So I think about people who are like, okay, who don't know otherwise, right? Because I was just kind of for me, like thinking back, I went to college right after high school, and I think it was already maybe it was like eighth grade. I think it was. I was already just by like teachers being put on track to make sure that I would be able to be on track in high school so that as soon as I graduated, I went to college. Right. So it's kind of like this is the
So you
whole,
get prepped for middle school.
yeah, in middle school for high school in order to make sure, you're making it into college. So I think back and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, well, this is the next thing to do. And to be quite honest, it wasn't, until high school and after college actually, and coming here, it's like, oh crap, there are other things to do. So for me, I'm like, well, what about those people who like truly do think, you know, college and education is the way to go? And there's nobody else, there's not a Sebastian in their lives, or, they don't have anybody else communicating or telling them or giving them a message that there is another option outside of that. So that's where I go. I'm like, well, how are they supposed to know
If that's all they know.
if that's all they know?
And it starts early, right? You're saying middle school.
Middle school.
Like imagine, so just for a second, and let's break everybody's hearts. Hopefully we can all recognize the institution of education is very much a business.
Yes.
Okay. So imagine if your business can begin to brainwash people into thinking that that's the path in middle school and that's considered a good thing.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Right now we're in a season where we have incredible amounts of student debt. We have the government beginning to cancel student debt, and people are crying in the streets, $1 trillion in ballooned education debt, sitting there, and they're going, hey, we don't deserve to pay for this. Fascinating, because in my world, you made that choice, right? Nobody put a gun to your head and told you to do it. You made that choice.
Yeah, nobody made them. But I think that's where I'm like, okay, nobody made them, but they truly thought like, okay, this is the way to
This is the
go.
path,
Yeah.
which is great.
And I,
It's their choice, right?
yeah.
So do you think somebody should bail them out for making their choice?
No. I think the part where I have the sentiment is
Oh,
like,
hell
well, they didn't they didn't
no!
know. Like, this is what they thought was best. Right? Maybe I'll tease out my thought a little bit more as we open up in discussion.
Yeah.
But I'm like, yeah, go ahead, Frank.
I think if you're going to college, there's only a certain amount of certain majors that you should take seriously, and nobody really talk. I don't think enough people talk about this, but a business degree is not really that useful. What are you going to learn from it? Most things in humanities, completely useless. Let's just be honest. If you're not going for engineering, or you want to become a lawyer or a doctor, then don't go to college. Just learn business. Seriously, that's my strong opinion. Even like legally, like in the law, you can do something called reading the law. You don't need to get a degree to be a lawyer.
I don't recommend it.
Not according to Suits.
I would recommend it tenfold, because I've heard so many times, including many.
You would hire a guy that was versed in the law, didn't have a degree.
Let me give you an example.
Please do.
Michael.
Let's say in business,
Cross.
would you hire
An ibid, Your Honor.
would you hire somebody that got an MBA or worked with Mark Cuban for 6 years?
Talking about in business?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's easy.
Okay. Would you hire somebody that, because
That's different than law specifically. I was just picking on your law stuff.
but that's only true if law is an objective thing. It's not an objective thing.
Fair enough.
Like there's so many ways to skirt it. There's so many ways to work around things. There's so many. Okay, let me give you an example in the legal field that's just really strange, and where there's ways you can skirt the law. Why is it? This is why, like, I'm liberal in some like areas, and then conservative in other areas. But why is it that you have to get elected to be a judge? Correct. You have to be elected.
Yeah.
Okay. Who provides funding for those judges? What donations? What political affiliations are made through that process? The people that donate the most are the defense firms. The defense firms, not random people.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So there's something
To lose.
Yeah, there's something really off about that. So 100% I'd hire somebody that worked for the top law firm in the nation for 6 years, as opposed to somebody that just came out of law school. There's no doubt in my mind. It's way better to hire somebody that actually is shrewd with regards to business. Who are you going to trust? Somebody that's been on the street for 6 years, learning from the best, or somebody who's been learning from a professor who's very, very rarely been in the field?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
That was
Checked.
That was my whole, in my experience in college. In Washington State, you can test into college while you're still in high school, which is great. And so I was able to finish the first 2 years of college while I was still in high school. I went to the University of Washington.
Wait, let's go over that part really quick. Again, 2 years of college in high school.
Yes.
So you took AP credits?
No, it's not AP credits. After your sophomore
Eight
year, you can take the
classes,
ASVAB. Or is it ASVAB? No, that's military. ACT?
Yeah.
What is the
Which one?
college entrance exam? ACT?
SAT.
SAT?
No.
Mhm.
Somebody's gonna remember this.
ACT.
ACT?
It's a college entrance exam.
We
whatever it
don't
is.
know.
But after your sophomore year in Washington, and it's available to everyone as long as I think you're in good standing.
Oh, I love
You can-
Washington. What the hell?
Me too. You can test into college your junior year. If you pass the test, which I think is ACT or one of those tests, college entrance exam, as long as you pass it, you can go into college your junior and senior year of high school and get high school credits and college credits. So you come out at 18 with your 2-year degree or your first 2 years of general requirements done, and you're going right into your major at 18, which is pretty sweet.
Congratulations!
And so
He doesn't know.
So I moved over to Seattle, and two of my good buddies, my roommates, immediately went into the University of Washington, and I waited a semester and worked for a recruiting firm, and was looking at going into their, at the time, University of Washington's CISB program, which was an international business program. And the counselor or whoever, I forget what they're called, but the person who's supposed to guide you through the program was explaining to me quite casually how when I got done, I was going to be in debt, probably about $63,000. And when I got done, I'd be about 3 years behind the real world. So I corrected her, of course. I'm you mean ahead? Yeah, ahead, right? She's like, oh, no, 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 that's actually very good. Most of these programs, you're 5 to 7 years behind. I'm like, why would anybody pay to be behind that far?
Right.
Like that baffled me. So that was my first red flag. And I was still thinking about doing it at that part. I was just like, well, that's the state of academia right now, which I understand why it lags, but still frustrating. So then I go to work for a staffing recruiting agency, and we were working with Amazon and Microsoft. So
Uh-huh.
I'm talking to hiring managers from both of these companies.
Nice.
And they made it clear over and over again when we were finding them people, they would take somebody with experience over somebody with a degree.
Right.
So I corrected them again, naively. I'm 18, 19, maybe 20 years old, somewhere right in there. And I'm correcting them naively, thinking, wait, you mean you would take the guy with the college degree, right? And I'm like, no, we'll take the guy with experience. We know what we're getting. A college degree doesn't mean you can do anything. Huge red flag for me. Then now I'm calling on candidates and placing them in these companies, and these guys are pissed off because Mr. Chan has a degree in biology and is frustrated why he's not making $75,000 in a clerical position. And I'm like, Mr. Chan, you tell me how your biology degree is going to help you in a clerical position. Well, I have a degree. Well, nobody cares. And that's the thing that frustrates me is that if you step back, and this was 20 years ago, if you step back, it's pretty obvious. You just have to step back for a second and start asking questions. Now, to be clear for people listening, I am a student for life. I'm obsessed with learning and growth, and I'm all about education. I'm referring to the institution of education as a viable way to get that education. I do think there are great reasons to go to school, though. If you go to an Ivy League school, your network is going to be worth more
Oh yeah.
than the degree, the
Do you-
relationships you
Do you
build.
think people project onto you certain attributes because you went to an Ivy League? If they went to Harvard, like,
But
oh,
I've
you
been
must be
Ivy
smart.
League guys, and I haven't experienced the wowness factor by any stretch.
Hmm.
Harvard, Brown, Princeton.
Right.
So, but yeah,
I work with them too.
I think the Ivy League guys get a little bit more credibility, and certainly statistically they do very well. When you look at a lot of the CEOs of big startups, Silicon Valley, things like that, most of them, a lot of them came from Ivy League schools, whether or not they finished or not. So there is a place for education. I'm just saying this idea that that is the path you have to take.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are warming up to the fact that well, it may not be the best. It's also you get, and I'll stop here for some comments, but you get professional students. We see this a lot right now, where school is a safe place to be because people leave you alone, right? So they just keep going to school. It's not
What do you
like
mean they leave you alone?
if I'm in between jobs, like I'm
Mhm.
going home for the holidays. If I say I'm in between jobs or I work at Starbucks, I'm probably going to get judged for that. Right? Like, what are you
Mhm.
doing? You're 25 years old and you work at Starbucks. If I say, oh yeah, I'm completing my, yeah, I'm working on my major, or I'm getting my bachelor right now, or I'm going back for another round of education. Oh, cool, that's amazing. What are you studying?
Mhm.
It's safe. Nobody questions you. They just leave you alone, and you
Mhm.
could do
Correct.
this for long periods of time. So you see this where people, and if you can get loans, right, and you get paid to do it, it's a very comfortable way to live
Mm.
for a season, and you can get away with it. But at some point you're going to be one of the guys voting for somebody to forgive all your student debt for continuing to go over and over and over again because it's a safe place, not because you're actually learning something. And part of the
Mhm.
reason for that, and I'll stop, is school as it is sold, and you mentioned being sold this idea in 8th grade, wasn't geared around passion. It wasn't geared around learning. The
Mhm.
message is get a piece of paper because it's going to make you more employable. That's concerning because if you look at who the biggest donors are to the biggest universities, anybody want to guess?
The biggest companies.
Biggest companies, corporate America. So you're getting groomed at a very young age to be an employee.
Mhm.
So that's like that creeps me out on so many levels. And that's the game. You're being told I got to get a degree because that's how I make myself more employable, which we know is not true anymore. It might have been true 30 years ago, but not nearly as true as it is now.
Maybe like 20 years ago.
You know.
10 years ago, maybe. Could make an argument for that.
Well, that was me 20 years ago, and I was already seeing companies default to people with experience over a degree.
Okay, well, there you go. Um,
Big companies, $1 companies as they would be now.
right. Do you think education in the present day is more of a scam than anything else? I mean, I'll go like I think people should get a degree, but just get important degrees. Let's just be honest about it. Like too many people are getting degrees in things that don't matter. You don't need it. Why do you need it? And even in the important like majors, you learn like like math, science, but you don't learn the practicality of how to apply everything. So
And I don't necessarily blame that. And I'd love to hear from you guys. I don't necessarily blame that on the institution of education per se. It's the messaging, it's the business of education. Ask most college students why they went to school. It was not to fucking learn. And they'll admit that, especially in retrospect, when they look back at where did I actually spend my time when I was in college? It was not in learning. It was to get a damn piece of paper.
I
and
was in
build-
the library every day, Sabs, 24 hours.
It's true. You would be the exception.
I'm just joking.
But most
Yeah.
people went for the relationships, right? They had fun and there was a lot of experiences. And a lot of people would say, like, hey, I don't regret going to school because the relationships I made, the experiences I shared. Well, great. Well, then that's where you spent your $50,000, your $100,000. Just understand that's what you spent it on. If that's what you wanted to do, awesome.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine going to one of these really prestigious schools. I went to Cal State Fullerton, so it was cheaper than a lot of these other schools. But like, can't imagine going to like Harvard and then having $300,000 in debt for, a gender studies degree. What?
Interpretive dance.
Interpretive. That's a major.
I actually
I wouldn't be
really go to
surprised. I wouldn't be.
school for that. Not gonna lie.
I wouldn't be
It's
surprised.
really hard. I would actually go to school for that.
One of our guys that runs our Miami market, when he was still going to school when he started with us. He started in our program.
Did he have to take that class?
And I asked him, I was like, so what classes are you taking? He was wrapping up his degree and he goes, well, I'm only in electives right now. So it just getting through it. So I was like, well, what are you taking? He's like, interpretive dance.
I'm gonna have to ask him about that.
That's
Brandon.
Yeah.
if there's one thing I'm glad that my dad pushed into me was get a good usable degree and not like
And if that's what you want.
Egyptian culture pushes this into their kids. Like you have to be a doctor, engineer, or lawyer.
STEM.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, that's true. STEM, and I'm kind of in STEM right now too. I actually am in STEM right now. Why don't make yourself broke and then you can't get a job afterwards. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna be $200,000 in debt and then come out and nobody wants to hire you because
You have no experience.
you have no experience and then you're living with your parents and
That piece of paper doesn't mean you're really good at even the degree in which you have. I don't know how many times I interview somebody who has a degree in like psychology and I'll start rapping psychology with them and they're totally lost. Something really basic like
Pavlov's dog.
or the father of psychology did did enough cocaine to kill a small horse, and they'll laugh like, who are you referring to? The father of psychology? Freud? No one?
Sigmund Freud. Yeah.
So I think the topic of like electives brings something up to me too, because we were obviously talking about like nobody, forced you to make this decision to go to school, but they do to some extent control what kind of classes, how many classes that you're going to be taking in order to like progress into next steps. So why do I have to pay to take a class that like legitimately has no value to me? That is for the most part just taking up time or
Good business decision on their part.
yeah. So I think there is a level of control in that. Like why not make degrees in particular to the topics that you are going to need to learn, not you have to have 20 plus other hours of electives and other basic things that you're never going to utilize again for the rest of your life.
Well, I mean, I think what were electives for? Isn't it just to like broaden your broaden your view of like what else is out there, that you could potentially
That's the
take
problem,
interest
probably.
I don't know.
It's like, oh, I love gender studies.
Theater's great.
I did theater as an
Yeah.
elective. It was great.
It was actually a really hard degree to get, And it's
It preps you.
It wasn't a degree, it was an elective that I chose my first year in college.
Yeah. I thought it was really cool. So at my school, they did, and I don't know how many schools do this. I have no idea, but they had this whole other. You could basically create your own degree. So instead
That's
of
fun.
like your
Choose your own
typical,
adventure.
yes, choose your own adventure. So you have your regulars like
Yeah.
business and communications or whatever. And it was so bizarre to me because I had no idea that this existed. But you basically meet with like one of the advisors or counselors and you tell them what it is that you want your major to be on. And some of them, I can't think of any titles, but some of them were like the most bizarre, like niche kind of majors. And the collection of classes that they would put together, so they would put their own itinerary or program together, yeah, to make sure that all of these classes and these courses basically lined up to what this,
Niche.
yeah,
Sandra, adjust your mic.
this
make
like
sure.
title, like this degree, which I was like, whoa, this is really crazy. But I thought that
That's
was
cool.
really, yeah, I thought that was really cool. But I mean, even for something like that, you have to go in knowing exactly what it is that you want to do and what you have an interest. But I had no idea that that was even a thing. I thought it was pretty.
Sub-Saharan rodents.
Yeah, it literally is something like that. It's crazy. Yeah, I'm just like, wow, where are you going to use that? Or how are you? But it's just really creative, really awesome.
Hmm. Can you fix the camera? Sorry about that. Yeah, I think there's also I didn't know how useless a lot of my classes. It didn't register to me when I was in college how
Mhm.
useless some of the things I was doing were. Until people started really talking about it in the open. Like college is like ridiculous. And that was actually when I started working with vector marketing, when all these business people, they're like, dude, you're not learning shit. You're not learning anything, right? And it didn't register until like I was like, holy crap,
So
I'm in the real world.
why do you think that didn't register for you until you went onto the real world?
I don't know, because
'Cause this is what I'm talking about here. Like this is it right
Yeah,
here,
exactly.
where people don't know. And I'm not saying you're the obviously for me
Right.
too. I'm just like, oh, okay, like go into college and this is the classes that I do. So in my mind, I'm like, why, And it goes
think-
back to the whole,
The guidance counselor told you what to
yeah.
do. You literally just listened to them. They're the only people that you trusted at that point, and you just followed their direction.
So I mean, does it have a lot to do with like your family, like how you grow up? Like what does it have to do with?
I think it's family, a lot of family.
You know?
But also has to do with like, I kind of thought when I got to like the later levels of my classes, I was like, wow, this is really tough. I have to learn something from this. Like it wasn't like a conversation I had. It was just a
Thought.
thought. It was just an assumption. I'm going to obviously get something from this, right? Like dynamics, statics, physics, very hard classes that I took. And I was thinking, I'm going to get something from this, right? I love physics, one of my favorite subjects. So I actually enjoyed it, intrinsically enjoyed it, which intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation in psychology.
Yep.
But like, I don't know. There's not really anything that useful. I think. And another thing too. So go ahead.
I was gonna say you don't even the bigger issue is you don't even know what is going to be useful because generally you don't have a way to apply what you're learning. It's all theory, right? And so that creates its own set of problems because by the time you get into the workforce and you're actually starting to work on your career, how much have you retained?
Mm-hmm.
How much do you actually remember? Right? And then because the way our brains work and how we retain information, if what you're being taught is theory and there isn't practical application, it doesn't stick because you don't know what to tie it to. So you can't even test out in many cases what it is you're learning for its validity.
It's not necessarily theory in engineering. It's more like
There are
principles like hydraulics. There's principles behind that are very important. Environmental, physics, statics, dynamics, very hard subjects, but there's not really like an application factor. Like, how do I apply this? How do I, like there's a software and engineering. It's AutoCAD. So you have to you don't really learn too much about how to use AutoCAD until you're actually in the field. And when you actually become an engineer, you're not a project manager. You're somebody doing like blueprints and things like
Yeah,
that. Like
okay,
that's,
for
yeah,
architecture,
exactly.
building shit.
Um, and wasn't me at all. I couldn't do it. I can't do this. I'm a business person through and through, and I probably could have done like sales engineering, something like that. But anyways, it's just it breaks my heart that so many people are out there and they come in with these preconceived notions, and when you actually interview them and things like that, they come in with this like, I need this amount, or they come with this expectation. And I know a lot of people are thinking, why are you worth that? I don't know why you're worth that, but they don't get it, and they're probably doing that with every person they go in, they every interview they go into. And it's really sad, because it's almost, in some circumstances, they're just completely unaware that people won't pay you this just because you have a degree and you spent this much money. And then you see people ranting about it online, like, why did I pay this much, and or I should be paid this much, and and they blame capitalism and all these other things, and it's like they go into that rabbit hole. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so going back to Dan Price's comment, millennials did everything right. That to me is a funny statement. I did everything they were told to do. So for immediately, when I'm like, well, when did we stop thinking for ourselves? If we did everything right, the only way I would know that somebody did everything right is by the result. They got the life they want. If they did not get the life they want, they did not do, by definition, everything right. But so this whole, you were asking, why do people do this? There is a social element, and we see this in our society right now on a number of different topics. Humans socially are very sheep-like. They follow the herd. There is this desire to fit in and to do what everyone is doing, and it's very, very strong and very compelling. Which is why, if you study history, the amount of crazy things that have happened that you're like, why? How the hell did anybody let this happen?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's because everybody looked around and said, "Oh yeah, this is what we're doing. It's good."
oh,
And
Well, and that's a
usually
topic for another time,
it
but
is,
it's
but
today.
yeah, right. And then when you're the guy who stands out and questions things, you're almost always going to be attacked,
Hmm.
right? Because there's something you're disrupting the flow of agreement. And that's even when guys are off their rocker, which sometimes they are, when they stand out, independent thinking is something that we don't really celebrate much, especially now. If you stand out and you say something that is against the quote unquote majority, by the way, when he's following along at home, the majority is almost always on the wrong side if you follow history. So that's fascinating to me. It's like the when you appeal to the masses, I'm like, thanks for the warning. That's
Mm-hmm.
generally not a good sign to me.
what was that experiment of there was a person of authority by another person that had to push a button that would potentially torture someone else.
Correct.
And
Electrocute them.
if the person had authority, then most people would at some stage push the button, and then only like a very select few people did not push the button.
Shouldn't it be like that?
Yeah, but that goes into like groupthink, or you listen to authorities, and how is that ingrained in people to listen
You're
to?
early on. It starts with your family.
Mhm.
Right? Like most
Listen to your
family,
elders.
yeah, and most
Mhm.
family, and I get it from a historical, maybe even an evolutionary standpoint. Potentially, our survival at some point was predicated upon everybody being on the same page and working together, much like schooling fish.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Together, they're stronger. Perhaps that's a solid argument, but when we exchange our independence and our ability to think for ourselves, you don't get away with. And I think part of the reason people do this is because then if they didn't make the decision, they don't have to take accountability, or at least they don't think they have to take accountability.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't do it because I thought it. I was told to do it.
Mhm.
Right. So now I can blame someone else for the reason why my
Yeah.
life is a wreck.
This is interesting scenario, but 1940. Let's go back to 1940 Germany. Okay.
1939,
Okay, 1939. Excuse me.
when Hitler was taking over Poland and most of the world just watched. Fascinating.
I want to tell you something. You're one of the smartest people I know.
Thank you.
He
Yeah.
retains information like no other.
Well, it's fascinating, and I don't want to rail on somebody, but there was a comment last night from a guy in Germany. I have lots of good friends in Germany. I had a business there for a while, but the guy said, he goes, the comment was something like, the U.S. is showing how much of a shit show they are they're the only country in the world where there are people who are questioning vaccines and masks. And what I wanted to comment back is, like, that's probably too rough. But I'm like, yeah, I remember historically when a leader was taking over most of Europe and most of the world just sat and watched and thought it was okay, didn't do anything about it.
That's
Independence,
interesting.
fierce independence and freedom is annoying. It's frustrating because it's hard to get everyone on the same page and people will challenge things. But I will take that all day long over manufactured consent. Right? That's more scary to me because more stupidity will happen there. Again, look at history, study history. That's a good subject in school for people to actually learn.
Yeah.
It's not the independent mind stepping up that causes the problems. It's mass consent. It's when everybody agrees that this is okay to do and that the shit that we thought was okay to do over the years is crazy to me. So that's where I step back. I'm like, yeah, it's annoying that people are questioning these things. Yes, it's annoying that there's all these arguments over is the vaccine good or not. There's clearly a huge amount of distrust. It's annoying that, that not everybody believes that COVID is dangerous. I get that. But I will take independent thinkers who are challenging the norms and challenging, like, hey, is this real? Is this valid? And there are significant reasons to do so over mass consent. We're like, yeah, we're all just doing this. Like, yeah, that's good. But what were you going to say about 1939 Germany? And actually started in 1937.
Is this team right here, 1939 Germany, excuse me, not 1940. 1939 Germany, are we part of the coup, or are we part of the masses?
Are you referencing Hitler taking over Germany?
There was a coup that was attempted during that period of time to try to take down Hitler.
Yeah.
If we're in that inner circle, right, we're considered part of that inner circle in the executive team or whatever, part of the Reich. That's what it was called. We're part of the head Reich, right? Are we going to be part of that team, or are we going to just follow the masses? And I think there's a lot to be learned in that too. Is like, how aggressive should you be? How smart do you have to play it?
I think when it comes to those kinds of decisions, the only way you can make that decision is if you are a principled person and you have clear values, not situational ethics. Most people operate from situational ethics, and survival is what predicates their decision making. And they got to get real about that. The human animal's first desire is survival, not value and principle. It takes an enlightened individual to operate from value and principle. Most people are operating from survival. And survival, you're not thinking about values and principles.
Let's ask Molly. We're in 1939 Germany. We're part of the head Reich. Is that, correct me if I'm wrong? I don't know. We're part of the head Reich in the Germanic army, or the Third Reich. And Hitler trusts us tremendously, right? All of us.
Sure.
What does the conversation look like? And are you going to make the decision to join the coup? Because I know me, I'm joining the coup for sure. I'm dying, or I'm dying. Or I'm gonna take power. I'm dying. I'm dying trying. Yeah.
Honor and duty.
Honor and duty.
Honor and duty.
Honor and duty. You guys are always gonna say that. Huh?
I just watched Mulan on Disney Plus. It's really, really good. But I always get very inspired by Disney movies. I don't know about you guys, but the stories are great. It's so
badass. It makes me want to like
learn
through walls
or whatever.
Yeah.
It's easy to say it in retrospect, right? Like, would you want to be part of the masses or the coup? Like, I would be like, of course I'll be part of the coup. I could take down, I'm talking about the rival. I was going to say dynasty, but that's the wrong word because we want to save the dynasty. Mulan, I know. Yeah, I mean, obviously with our team, I feel like we would try our best to be the black sheep or the unicorns of this whole piece.
I just imagine us right now, like, okay, guys.
There has to be something said about, like, you can't stand out as a unicorn because you're going to get killed by Hitler.
I'm already standing out as a unicorn. You can't tell.
Molly, you're going to die.
I would much rather die with honor than die as.
You got to be smart, though. You got to be a little smart. Like, you got to play it smart.
How would I play it smart?
You got to
in the corner. Now I'm thinking about paintball. I hate paintball sometimes. Like, I would literally die or camouflage myself in a corner and then
just stay there.
Just stay there.
I mean,
If I'm being real.
that time period is a fascinating, psych experiment to understand how that happened. But he is not
Right.
the only one. That's happening in different parts of the world right now. It's more like, how do you get the masses to consent to craziness? Like, that's the fascinating thing. Noam Chomsky wrote a really good book called Manufacturing Consent. He's a linguist at MIT.
I know Noam Chomsky.
He's fairly
He's a
controversial.
socialist, hardcore socialist,
Yeah, dude, he's got
hardcore.
yes, but he's got some really fascinating ideas on how you get the masses to consent to things. And that's more what I would be looking at. Like, if you operate from principle and value, and freedom is a true principle you work from, then you question everything. That's like my, as a teaching philosophy, I'm not interested in convincing people to believe what I believe. I'm interested in helping people learn how to think, right? If they learn how to think and they think independently, they will come to the right conclusions. I believe that wholeheartedly. It's where we get into convincing or manipulating or doing everything in our power to force people into what to think is where I get very concerned. And that's prevalent in our society everywhere right now. We're not really interested in teaching people how to think. We're very interested in beating people into submission on what to think. So much so that most people are very quiet about what they actually think, which is why we have this idea of the silent majority.
Sandra, are you going to join the coup team?
Absolutely.
You are
Yes.
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
You made the decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool team.
Yes.
You're not going to argue with us
No.
at all. Okay.
Like with you right now?
Well, you
Give him the pill.
oh.
That's what I say.
By the way,
Give him the pill. Sure.
based on my experience with everyone here, I wanted to wait to do this, but this is kind of stupid. But
What?
I created like little characters for everyone.
You did.
No, like not like I didn't like create.
What are we
I'm gonna tell you.
doing?
I gotta charge my
Please.
phone actually because I gotta pull it up.
Please do. I'm curious.
Okay, so
what you
Kat, are
think
you gonna join the
this.
coup?
I don't know if I would have been a part of the military to begin with, but I would definitely revolt against whatever's going on. Like, and not just in the Hitler scenario. I think
But Sabs,
lots of
so
things.
you're with Sabs.
That's
You're
like-
you're gonna convince. You're gonna try to, right? No.
What?
Convince? Could try to convince Sabs out of the coup, or convince him to do it?
All it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to do nothing.
Right. But
Frank is like, right.
your partner has a has a
Doing
strong
nothing.
influence on you, right?
Yes.
So are you going to convince him, or are you going to convince him to do it, or try to prevent him from doing it?
I don't know in particular, like some of the words that you're using. I don't know what you're saying. Like 100% do what is right, not
Yes.
Do what
go
is right.
along with the masses. So whatever, if that means be a part of the coup, whatever you're saying, like, yes, do that. And I think that like it's one thing in particular, like for me as myself, I can say, yes, I'd be willing to sacrifice my life for the right thing. Like, yes, I'm going to fight for what is right. But then there's also the consideration of like, if it wasn't just me and I have a family and kids that I'm trying to protect,
Right.
like there's other layers I think that could come into that where at least I'm not gonna, put up the middle finger and, scream at the top of my lungs, like draw attention to myself that's going to get my entire family killed. But I'm going to make sure to protect them and go about it in a way where I'm at least able to help those that are hurting, if not be able to, have someone secured with my family and go out to make a difference myself.
You guys want to know the characters?
Yes.
I do.
Okay.
I'm curious.
Sure. I don't want to just go from memory because I feel like I'm going to get it wrong. Is that written down?
Okay. So while you're charging your phone and figuring that out to wrap this up. So going back to like the whole education piece, if somebody's listening right now and they are thinking about either going to college or not, like what are some of the things that you would suggest and tips of like, okay, this is what you should be thinking about? Or even if they're not thinking about it, like how do you create that awareness that we just talked about? Like, well, a lot of us just kind of went because this was the right path.
There's just a couple things I would say immediately. Make it a habit of questioning everything.
Mhm.
Think for yourself. Do your own math. Do your own work. Don't appeal to authority. So number one,
Mhm.
I think there are lots of great instances where college would be the right path for someone, but
Mhm.
just don't assume it is the right path. That's
Okay.
just what you do.
I don't think that's the only option.
Yeah, it depends on the outcome you want in your life and what you're looking for. There are some really great scenarios in which getting a degree is the right decision, but make sure that that decision is being made with a clear head and that you're thinking through why you're doing it, not just following the masses. That's what we do,
Yeah.
right? And then own your decision. Don't blame other people for your freaking decisions. If you made the decision, freaking own it. Yeah, I decided to go. That was my choice.
Yeah.
Not asking somebody to bail me out for my choice. It was my choice. I didn't get the outcome I wanted. I'm going to pivot, change, and move into something where I am going to get the outcome I want.
Yeah.
There's a huge problem in society when we pervasively teach people that it's not their fault. That's how you have that is the path to
Always your fault.
somebody else being in control.
Yes.
You no longer are taking ownership for your decisions. It means you're no longer in control of your life. Someone else is.
Yeah.
And that's scary to me because it's so pervasive right now. Like nothing is anybody's fault. Like
Well, and
fuck,
is
take
that-
ownership.
Is that in particular a millennial characteristic?
I think that's been around forever. I think Aristotle, I believe it was Aristotle, maybe it was Plato, one of the two.
Aristotle was realistic. Plato was idealistic. Plato was the guy that did the cave analogy, or
correct,
the sh-
the cave.
the allegory of the cave, and then Aristotle was more of a realist.
Fascinating, but there's a debate there as well. But what specifically what I was getting to is he lamented over the next generation that they were weaker, they weren't as disciplined. I'm like, that was 3,000 years and change ago. So that makes me laugh. I'm like, well, this seems to be a human tendency that we judge the next generation more harshly than perhaps we should. And certainly millennials were not the ones that came up with the idea that nothing is their fault. It's just until somebody changes that, until culture, and there was a season, I think, historically where, specifically in the United States, I'll comment on, there was a season of ownership where we owned our result, we owned our lives, we took, and we were highly independent. That's why a lot of the world finds us to be very annoying. There is a value of independence here, in defiance, in a way that sometimes other countries will look at us and go, "You guys are a shit show. Like, just everybody get in line."
Wonder.
And then I think about that and I'm like, if everybody got in line in the United States, everybody would have been speaking German right now or some other fucking language. Like, that's part of what makes us us, but also is annoying. And I can get both sides of it.
I wonder what my uncle would say. Maybe we should have him on the podcast. He's a professor.
Professor Frank.
But takeaways, think,
Never.
take ownership,
Never.
learn how to think for yourself, own your decisions. College is one path of many, and it's not always the right path. And don't blame other people for your decisions. You made the decision.
Right.
That's what I would say.
Very cool.
And if you
Sandra,
did everything right, the only way we would know you did everything right is if you ended up with a life you wanted. If you didn't, that's on you. You can't blame somebody else.
all right. So we have to end soon, Sandra, for you, right?
Yes.
Man, it just turned on. So
What are
do
they?
we have like 3 minutes.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
She's on the call already.
This is just based on my experience. It could be wrong.
Okay.
Okay. So Dre is not here. Should I
Tell us.
tell
Tell
her?
us.
She'll hear it.
Dre is a communication specialist based on everything I've experienced on this podcast, because she has literal like conversations with the camera, entire eye conversations with the camera. Like if you actually look at the podcast,
Forward to those clips.
yeah, yeah. So like it's usually when I say something, I say something and then she's like that, or
Disagrees with you.
she doesn't like something. It's like, you know what I'm talking about? I think you do.
So funny.
So she's the communication specialist.
Oh my god.
Molly, you're the sniper.
Ooh.
Sniper.
Yeah.
I'm actually really good at shooting.
Yes, because what you do is you're very agreeable for most of the time, but then you choose one moment to disagree heavily. So it's like, right, about,
Yeah.
where did that come from? Where the heck did that come from?
Great.
I like that.
Keep going. I think Sandra's is the funniest, actually.
Oh gosh.
Tell us.
Tell us, Frank.
Yes.
This one's kind of funny.
I might just give you the pill for sure after this.
That goes right into the. Goes right into this.
Okay, go.
Violent audience member with repressed anger that jumps in at random moments and that goes with the crowd. And I put in parentheses, you haven't been as talkative, but you jump in
Huh?
when everybody is disagreeable with me and you go, this is why we would give you the pill, Frank.
I feel like Sandra talks a lot.
Yeah, you do talk a lot, but then there's moments where like you're quiet,
Mhm.
and then you come in and you're like, this is why we give you the pill, Frank. This is exactly why. And I'm like, what like, can you like lead up to something like that? Like, don't just like come in. So I think like if we were like gang members, all of us, I think if everyone was kicking one person, you'd be like, come in and just like the final blow.
Bump them on the head.
Wow,
You're
that's
like,
so
We need to give her.
pretty.
We need to give her a red pill that she can hold on to.
Like, just like you.
Ever since that teamwork talk, ever since that teamwork talk, I feel like that's how you agree with me. Like that's your main.
That
Or disagree.
What is the pill? The pill is like to kill somebody, or
Yes.
You weren't here.
You weren't here for that.
What? Where were you?
Spaceship. Everyone dies. Everyone dies. No one lives.
Where were you?
I don't know where I was.
So the whole thing was.
Yeah.
Were
Okay,
you in
go
Texas?
through what
No,
else we got.
Were you in Texas? I don't know.
All right, so Kat.
It's just sitting at home meditating.
I don't think to be fair, I don't think from my experience, I don't think I made the best impression on Kat initially. So I would say I put her as an antagonist because I could virtually say something completely benign, harmless, and she'd be like, well, who are you to say that? Why do you think you're like an expert on that in that field? So antagonist, that's unfair. That's unfair a little bit because
I
like
thought you were going to go deeper than that. I'll
Really?
be antagonist. Yeah.
antagonist. Okay,
She's a Taurus. There's a certain. That's fair.
are we ready for Sabs?
Do it.
Watchmen, because you're always looking at your watch and you make very dramatic movements like when you're looking at your watch.
That's what you got. Watchmen.
Yes, because you do that a lot. You're like,
That's funny. Do, 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 do.
but it's very dramatic. And
What
then
about yours, Frank? Is it Sleepy Engineer?
no, it's
Yeah. What'd you do for you?
I'm the disruptor, but not in a good way.
Okay.
Like I cut people off. I say sometimes, at least I'm aware, socially inept things.
Mhm.
Like I'll say something that's like, no, you shouldn't have said that at that moment. And then Sabs, when I actually rewatch, he's like, he makes a joke that just goes right over my head. And like two of you are like,
Laughing.
that's funny.
Honestly, I think you gave me the coolest one.
Yeah, I really liked Molly's. That was really cool. I have suppressed anger and want to kill people, apparently.
So, yeah. Okay. So you speak. I love when you speak.
Mancha.
But Hancha.
Your words are very potent when you give them.
They are.
They're very potent. So
Sandra
Frank
also
wants to
like,
save himself.
Butterpuff.
has these words. Like she'll have. I can't remember what it was. Like wowza.
Wowzers.
oh, that could have been a great one too.
Another word for the next pod.
The
Like
jolly,
you have
the
pretty
announcer. The announcer or something like that.
That's funny. The announcer?
Yeah, or the broadcast journalist. Mm,
Interesting.
All right,
we should think-
sports
All
commentator.
all right, so
All right.
land it.
Let's land it. What?
Okay,
Sabs,
Oh.
you're landing it.
Yeah,
Sab,
Sab.
land it.
He kind of did with his tips.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Well,
Sounds
here you
good.
go. Happy. Oh,
Bye.
tell Dre, we're shouting out to Dre.
Oh yeah, she's in a
She's
race right
racing.
now.
In a race. She's with the Dirt People
Yep.
out
She
in
wins.
somewhere. Reno? I'm not sure, but
Don't throw up in your helmet.
Yeah.
don't or pee in your pants.
Good luck.
Don't drink too much beer before.
Yeah.
She's
And happy
hydrated.
birthday, Molly.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm just a queen.
Birthday, Molly.
Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Everyone have a great weekend. We'll see you Monday.
Happy 25th.